Welcome and good morning, good afternoon, good evening, dear audience, and welcome Dan and Marshall. Today, dear audience and viewers, which you are jumping in regularly, you find the four of us. Today, Thomas is on the road, such as he's on the way to Zoholics, and in our little preparation time, Dan shared that a lot of his team are on the way to Zoholics as well. Yeah. So stay curious, and we probably mention a bit more details, such as who to greet from our studio into the Austin area, and wish them all the best. I would like to focus to our topic of today, which took me, as we have you the second time, Dan, with a very interesting perspective. Our today's convos, we are diving into a thought-provoking proposal you did in suggests hitting the brake on GenAI development with a gap year. In your recent article, you raised some crucial questions. Is GenAI truly generating new content or just recycling what's already out there? Can smaller innovators survive the relentless race dominated by tech giants? As vendors flood the market with hyped solutions, you argue that a break is overdue to gain a better understanding of what we actually want from this technology. You discuss, and we will join in that discussion, the balance between efficiency and true customer experience, and whether the current AI race could potentially stifle smaller yet valuable approaches. And we have to discuss and reflect, is it realistic to expect proponents of rapid GenAI developments to cooperate with skeptics? Could this bigger is better race eventually implode? And what would a gap year actually achieve for the industry and the users? We'll also explore, or we intend to do so, how frameworks from the jurisdictional or general legal aspect, like the European AI Act or the White House Directive, could guide the future of AI developments. And so, dear audience, please stay tuned as we unpack these pressing questions and more, inspired by Dan's provocative piece he wrote, and we will happily share in the show notes later. But all in one question to be placed, it's very important to know who is Dan, as we invited him as an expert. So then we would appreciate if you introduce yourself to the audience. Sure. And I shut up for some time.
Well, thank you for that intro. And you'll never know whether this is Dan or his digital twin. So let's start right there. So I'm a technology analyst, if you will. I started a company called Opus Research back in 1986 with been around a while. But you know, I have a history of looking at new technologies and their primarily impact on us people from the beginning. And I'll take credit for coining a term called conversational AI in about 2012-ish. and I had a distinct purpose there, and it relates to what we're talking about. AI itself, general AI, has been on this sine current. You know, there's like adoption and then depression, then adoption and depression, and I was looking at the use of precursor technologies that are a subset of general AI. They are, and it was around natural language understanding. It was about the ability of improving conversations between and among people and how technology assists that, but then people and machines, which was built on understanding, a certain amount of analytics, and then machine learning. So it would constantly improve over time, and have been well aware, even long before ChatGPT made its appearance, now almost 2 years ago, that under the covers were these under the covers of what's going on in the cloud and all that stuff to support specifically customer care at that time. There were these technologies that understand us better than we do perhaps ourselves, that can respond in, not only recognize what we say, but respond with something that is human-like. And but from the point of view of, hey, what works for us, it isn't moving towards the singularity. It isn't moving towards a general artificial intelligence, the stuff that the people at OpenAI are clearly working towards, where there's a crossover point and machines are smarter than us, and you talk about polarity. Is that going to be us and them, or is our whole role right now trying to figure out how we live with our robot overlords? And I'm saying, no, that's a distraction. And I wrote this article about, should GenAI take a gap year, sort of thinking we're already in a gap year, and it's built on expectation that started 2 Novembers ago when ChatGPT made its appearance. Yeah. And I would argue how it was, GPT was already at GPT-3. So we're at the 3rd rev of a generative, pre-trained transformer model that all these people, at Google, at OpenAI, at Cohere, were already very familiar with. And it was exposed to us for the first time. And we could converse with it. So it became a conversational AI. We could say something, it would respond. We could say, tweak that, do that. And we've evolved in our expectations, and it's evolved because it's a lifelong learner, and its life is forever. and when we read about what's going on with large language models, take your pick, and people are doing analysis of whether Llama is better than GPT-4, and 4.0 comes along, this horse race coverage of what is happening there. It's kind of cool. but my idea of the gap year is, we're already in a gap year where the expectation of what people can do and what we're actually doing with it is a big gap that our mission is to sort of close. And part of that formula was to say, I anthropomorphized GenAI. I had it, portrayed as this lifelong learner that maybe we should just, I wasn't a doubter. I was saying, let it go off and learn. There's no stopping it. The onus is on us during that time is to figure out how we can best use it. And I was thinking in the context of enterprises, sort of make our employees happier and more productive, recognize our customers' need quicker, and respond in ways that are helpful. So I guess that's more than an introduction of me, but I sort of wanted to get the framing out there of what I was thinking of. Oh, thank you.
Well, no, it definitely gets both your credentials and the point across. In my personal opinion, I think that 2 years ago may have been too soon to release GPT onto the public. we had, in the CRM, CX, whatever you call us industry, been experimenting, developing AI for quite some time. But it was behind the scenes. It was in the industry context. November 2021 or 22 comes along. I can't remember. And suddenly, Pandora's box gets open. It's like, hey, everybody, come and play with the new AI toy. And
exactly. Play.
Made it incredibly popular, put it in the public conscience. And instead of developing AI applications at a normal pace, now all the vendors have to lead with it. They have to say, look what we're doing with AI. And I'm with you, man. It's too early.
Yeah, and that
is, we came away from stuff for nerds to stuff for everybody. And now the thing is what Thomas mentioned in another context, the genie is out of the bottle. We won't get it back. Yeah. Sorry for interrupting that.
No, that was great.
Yeah, genie out of the bottle, cat out of the bag, Pandora's.
Oh no! Well, that was
Well,
that was a funny thing. Came out in November. In December, somebody asked it. Without saying, cat's out of the bag or genie's out of the bottle. How would you describe, your status right now? And it came up with, the confetti's out of the cannon.
Good one. Which I remember when you did that. Yeah.
But that's Ralph mentioned, there's all this promise. It's not just that I declared I'm no longer an expert, because the experts are the people that are using it and discovering how to use it best, and also with a little bit of resentment, after covering this forever, I discovered that all of my competitors as analyst groups, they're bigger experts than I am. So I'll back off. I've achieved sort of amateur analyst status here, and what I think is really important is to look in, Marshall, to what you're talking about from the CRM enterprise information processing infrastructure point of view. This stuff is becoming very real. There are demands at the C level to, that's what Ralph was saying, putting pressure on, do something right now. There are efforts and there's efforts that come home to roost with IT, which is fantastically interesting, because all of the playing around that was being done prior to the appearance of ChatGPT were in a part of the company that was governed by digital transformation, and it was in a sandbox, and for, as Marshall was saying, for good reason, we hadn't unleashed it on customers, and there's still reasons not to do that. But now it's all becoming very real, and IT gets involved and wants to know where this stuff resides. You want to develop APIs that support it. You want to make sure it's encrypted on either side and in transit. There's all this stuff that we're sorting out, and that's part of what you want to spend the gap year doing. The other really specific stuff has to do with how much is this stuff going to cost? Because the early experimentation, if you're in a really large company, you have a whole department, and computational linguists are involved, and blah blah blah. So there was a budget for personnel and a budget for processing, and how it got spent was kind of mushy. And now when you want to say, hey, well, here's the gap. Hey, we can do all this stuff. What are we really doing? And there was the quote low-hanging fruit of we capture all utterances, we transcribe it more accurately, we extract insights, we can suggest next best thing for agent, we can compose emails, that sort of stuff. So there's this wide world of opportunity that has been demonstrated. And then what people are actually doing with it is it's kind of stuck at, post-call summarization and shortening, making the agents more efficient, because that has sort of a built-in ROI, but it still doesn't address what does this cost? What am I, and that's where we're spending a lot of our attention here. I just wrote something. I was thanking Genesis, of all companies, for publishing in their release of Genesis Cloud AI, this whole pricing thing that, they develop their own tokens, and their customers get tokens allocated. Well, their subscribers to particular tiers of their service are allocated a certain number of tokens, which represents X number of conversations with agents or X number of intelligent routing. But it pretty much started out how companies are actually using AI and what it's going to cost them. So we're introducing some certainty, and we have a consumption model complete with my favorite thing, tokens. And I didn't think we were going to go there in this discussion, but the stuff, some of it during this quote gap year is getting very real, and people are going to figure out the ROI of deploying GenAI and LLMs in both in their employee management and their customer relations management. And so it's happening.
Right.
There's no stopping it.
As it is very fast and running around and flying around, it is challenging us with what you mentioned a bit in a nutshell. You touched the ROI costs for the enterprises. You touched the what is it worth for me as a user? How much AI will I buy? And how much co-piloting am I willing to pay for if I at a sudden had a bargain from my office vendor, such as I get for $10 a month my office, and at a sudden I have to pay for that fantastic co-pilot, which is giving me some extra sexy magic, the same amount of money. Oops, I'm doubling investment for doing my job done. There comes my first question mark. Yeah. And the second comes along as thinking about the costs is also thinking about the energy consumption, and this costs money. The water pumping up to cool the data centers, that's cost money. And you have to build it on solid ground, which is not cheap as well. So we have to look a bit behind the curtain or the fence or the wall, which is around all that. And I would like to know where you see that by seeing these advantages we pinpointed from being efficient, being effective, getting jobs done faster, and the experimenters which have their experiences collected, where are they driving it? How do they communicate to the vendors, and are they heard what they would like to get out of that?
Yeah. So right now they're voting with their budgets, and there's like another gap you're bringing up here, which is if you look at the investment plans of the hyperscalers. If you look at what OpenAI is talking about spending, if you look at what the big guys, are going to sink into Anthropic, which in turn, so there's just a lot of capital investment, and we've seen the $7 trillion figure that Sam Altman was talking about, and that seems out of line with the consumption models that we're seeing, where as you pointed out, some people, the big example is people looking at NVIDIA, which started out as a game processing unit maker, and there's a valuation on its stock that observed just how sales of their chips to go into these data centers has tripled every quarter or whatever it is, and they sort of lose this assumption that monopolies don't last very long, and there's that you can't that you go through this period where the revenue that NVIDIA is seeing right now, which is huge, comes out of the capital budget of companies, so it's not dinging anybody's profitability right now, but the customers consuming subscriptions to these things or buying the tokens and stuff like that are going to have to answer the profitability question, and they're nowhere in that, right? They're I shouldn't say nowhere, but it's just it remains to be seen exactly what you're saying, Ralph, is that there's budget that enterprises would like to see some certainty around, that they're going to invest in a solution, in subscriptions, usually to CCaaS companies or to Salesforce or somebody that are playing the role of bringing large language model driven solutions into the marketplace. So they have their licenses, but there's some big disparity on what is being invested in the infrastructure and the consumption that you see coming through enterprises. And then I want to address what you were saying about, you called it behind the curtain, but I call it, hey, in the outside world, there's days I wake up thinking these technologies I'm covering are responsible for global warming. They're responsible for the depletion of water in certain areas, and that doesn't feel sustainable. But somehow we humans are capable of tuning that out as we sort of ask some of the more abstract questions about how we want to incorporate GenAI in our lives.
Yeah. We touched now the very personal approaches, and I would like to go a step back on some technology issues we had. We touched the ROI, we touched the environmental and social or society challenge on cost and what we invest and what we utilize, what we have to get something out of it. Now, is it more repetitive, or is it really smart already, what we have at our hands?
Well, so a new layer to the solution, the technology solution stack has been added over the past 2 years. So, if you look at the ISO model that started with the physical, then the transport, then the display. There's an AI layer to what's going to be invested in, and that doesn't go away. And it's part of an ecosystem that will create new jobs, new roles at the micro level for people. We've already heard that, hey, there's prompt engineers now or something like that, but there's new business opportunities that, as you look at GenAI, and kind of decouple two things. There's two aspects to it. There's sort of the aggregation and pre-training and stuff that happens on the one hand, and then there's the generation and output on the other hand. There's new business opportunities being created for companies that want to specialize in making these technologies truly beneficial to us people. So on the aggregate, so you're going to see, and Salesforce is a pretty good example of like a middle man or person that wants to play the role of creating a trusted area. They call it a trust layer, where you can bring in the functions. You can choose you can do the mix and match and of large language model to the desired end piece, and try to create sort of domain specific language models that are less, they'll always hallucinate. The truth is the truth is that these large language models are not connected to reality. So there's this whole opportunity around grounding it in company specific or domain specific information that then feeds that generative side, so that there's less, like it may hallucinate, but the sort of topic creep and departure from reality that it does is narrowed. And then you have another set of opportunities at that to review what it actually comes out with and ensure that even in that low probability event that, hey, a GenAI thing tells you that you can put glue in your pizza dough or something like that you can catch that and not let it go public. But anyway, I'll stop there.
Right. Well, so as of now, would you say GenAI solutions are bent more towards improving customer experience, or is it more about making things more efficient in business? And will that change in the near future?
So what we're seeing is a dearth of customer-facing applications. But it doesn't mean that you're not improving customer experience, because what you're trying to do is make agents more efficient, responsive, and looking at the correct information. So one of the things that'll happen in the near future, and I think the release of GPT 4.0 demonstrated, is it's going to get easier to talk to and converse. So one of the things we'll see is IVRs being replaced by voice bots more easily. And I have to now remember, you asked it sort of in two ways, and one. So
it's like, are the AI solutions improving customer experience or being used to make things more efficient? It sounds like the answer is yes.
Yeah. So, well, and it's a little bit than that. I think in the both the short and long run, but mostly in the long run, we have to acknowledge what we're talking about: intelligent automation. We're not talking about GenAI or LLMs or anything, because the economic justification is going to be built around automation and the cost savings, we hope, Ralph, that result from automating things that were labor intensive and that sort of thing. So there's a whole domain of using LLMs to eliminate some of the expensive labor that was involved in building bots initially. So you're going to see better bots created, by LLMs and generative AI, and we're seeing that already. So, and that's a two. a 2 to 5 year process. I mean, one of the things about the gap year was this should be inconsequential because we're pursuing sort of a 10-year process of figuring out how to incorporate, Gen AI into our workflows, into our company workflows. And we're really at a very early stage. And all I was saying is step back, give yourself at least a year to sort of define and answer these pressing questions that both of you have brought up is, can we do this profitably? Can we do it in a way that's positive, both on customer experience and employee efficiency? And we're starting.
One could argue it's less of a gap year and more of a trial separation.
Very interesting aspect.
Both sides need to step back and evaluate either their capabilities or their needs.
If I'm too stupid to use it in a right way, I will not have all the fun. And that is my concern. Because, playing is the one thing. Working seriously and having a creativity or some efficiency is the other thing I was hoping for and expecting. And I just read a comment of a creative writer, a lyric lady. She said, well, honestly, I don't want the AI to think for me. I want her to wash my dishes and do my laundry. That would be marvelous. So I have more time to do what I would love to do.
The AI is supposed to be doing the work for us so we can concentrate on art. It's not supposed to be making art for us.
And I mean, exactly what most people, if they are on the play around mode, try to do.
And I think that got translated into, globally, they're not here to replace us. They're here to make our lives better. And more granularly, they aren't really capable of critical thinking. And to your point in one of the early questions, they're not really creative. They're not creating anything. These are autocomplete on steroids. It's a statistical model that is designed to predict the next word in a sequence based on the stuff it saw, which is why it can't do math, because if you say, what is 2 + 2, it'll go into like all of the world's knowledge, and yes, it's most likely to say 4, but there will be instances where it doesn't because somebody said something else. It's not doing these functions. It's not thinking. It's not. So it shouldn't threaten our jobs. I mean, like I said, don't worry, be happy at this point.
I want to share also an observation, as Germans are trying to do everything in perfection. So what they did is, not only the Swiss, but this
doesn't mean they're succeeding. It means they're trying.
The perspective I wanted to share with you is that some serious researchers and journalists tried to pass the Matura. This is what we have after something like college, when you have to pass an examination to go forward to university. And they tried this on the questions of the most stressful test. That's the one from Bavaria. And ChatGPT 3 and ChatGPT 3.5 were not capable to pass that examination. So come to PISA, these worldwide studies about where we are losers in competitive comparison with other countries. But now they did check it on the latest GPT 4.0, and surprise, surprise, it would have passed the Bavarian Matura test. Now, that comes to the point that we have some more learning in it. We have the presentation of the latest Gemini baby, which some people are poking in and showing up all the mistakes it's making, but others are saying it has the ability to react to speech, like the answers are coming like a human being, in the way of, if you take a bit time to rethink or you rephrase the question, that is exactly the time you need to answer probably properly. Yeah. And this is something I was wondering, where are we going to? Do we have now students and pupils which learn by heart to utilize technology to support their laziness? Or we motivate them? Yeah, I'm honest. I would have gone for make it the lazy way and be most effective and get splendid marks. Yeah. So where is the motivation for the kids and the students to make more out of it?
I'll put this on a personal level. I hope my wife doesn't get mad at me, but she we met in graduate school, and at every level of college, she was Beta Gamma Sigma, and she was a straight A student, and I was a C. Well, I went to a college that had no grades, and then when I went to graduate school, I would come this close to being a B student, and I said, "Wow, how do you do that?" And she said, "Well, I'm just basically lazy. I take courses that I know I'm going to do well in, and I learn from the teacher what it takes to do well, and I sit in the back row and do crosswords." And it's like, I listen to this continuum for how are so there's these new resources that we can master, and do they promote laziness, or do they really help improve the performance of individuals who have tasks to complete? And there's going to be a blend. I mean, yes, it's going to help lazy people be lazy. It's going to. They talked about this with the early GitHub Copilot that coders were using, and the A-level coders would say, "I wouldn't use it for this, but I use it for." They know specifically what tasks it does well. I wouldn't use it to write a program. But if I hit a sticking point and I want some debugging done, and it's going to save 3 hours or a day of my life going through this stuff, I'm going to use it. That motto is going to get generalized. Is that people that are capable of being creative, that do have critical thinking, are going to figure out the specific ways it helps them. Okay. In the meantime, there's the rest of us who, and Marshall, the demos of contact center wrap up, saving after call wrap up used to take an agent time, and efforts to automate it meant that they would go to a checklist and they'd always say the same thing. Right. Or if they were called upon to make a real comment, it just sort of became standardized. But so when they moved to an LLM or GenAI based phone wrap up, it took less time and it was more accurate, and it provided more insights to the managers and the marketing people than the stuff they were getting before. And it's gonna and yet the agent didn't have to do anything. So you want to accommodate, and it's not about laziness. We we have stuff we're good at, and stuff we like to avoid because we're not good at it. And here's a chance to have a resource come in and do a better job than I could do in my sleep. It's stuff I don't want to do.
Right. There is this tendency to refer to that as laziness. I mean, I
Yes.
do it, you do it, everyone does it. But when it comes right down to it, we're a tool-making species. We are geared from the start to do things to make our lives easier.
Absolutely.
And this is the
But
way
there's
the tool.
But there's a trap in thinking of these as a tool. I think it's going to manifest as a tool, but there's, like I said, and the reason I wanted to anthropomorphize this thing is like this constant learner off to discover the world is that's what it's going to do, you know, and or they, I guess we can say they, that's what they're going to do. And different manifestations are, and Ralph, I know we were going to bring up, there's foundation models, the large language models, that trillions of dollars are going to be invested in the thing. They're going to run out of training material or already have, so they're going to generate their own training material to, really create this whole synthetic thing. And in the meantime, there's a lot of development going to make these domain specific or even personally tailored AIs that will either be your personal agent if you're as an individual in your work, in your personal life, or your quote digital twin, but it's something that learns from you, and does the sort of pattern matching with like what's out there in these large language models, and that's where I think things get really, really interesting, is how we during this gap year kind of figure out how we personalize, how we not that it's a tool, I mean it's like an agent or whatever, something that works on my behalf.
Yeah, that is a very interesting aspect. I would like to jump in a bit, such as we enable people, employees, to act to the customer's benefit smarter, as they have not learned the whole manual to operate, but they are capable now with the help of AI to answer specific questions and be a helpful friend when asked for support. That is one of the benefits. What I asked myself, and we discussed earlier, is that greediness and the race for speed in the big ones might kill the very smart, but not so large, very skillful helping solution vendors or creators. How will that be fixed? If I go for Darwin, the survival of the fittest, the largest, the fastest, will it kill all the nice little ones?
And I don't think that's how it works. I think, the hyperscalers, the deep pocket folks are going to go and do what they're doing with foundation models forever. And then there's opportunistic, that's what I was saying. It helps create that AI layer that fuels the creation of an ecosystem of solution providers that do two things, at least. And one of the early things is how you put guardrails around what those guys, and it's usually guys, I'm sorry, are doing. And the other is, and that's going to be a really big business, sort of looking, constantly evaluating who's doing the best, in certain use cases or to answer certain questions, and then, fit to purpose implementations of the big things, because we don't really need all the world's knowledge to answer those personal questions, or be an agent co-pilot or something like that. So
Yeah.
so there's like these businesses that'll, so technology solution providers that'll be constantly aware of what the best things are. They're running different traffic through, and they've been learning for a long time that even from day to day you'll get different answers from the same model, same same number after the three initials or whatever, and you can run a bunch of traffic through it on Tuesday, do X, Y, and Z, and get a set of answers, and do the same thing on Thursday, and you'll see there's some topic creep and answer creep. So there's we're not at a steady state yet, and if you're gonna start implementing this in a way that consistently helpful, there's limits that you put around what you're going to ask it to do and how you interpret the results and then put it into production. So in a way, for the people that played around building, for instance, scripts on speech-enabled IVRs, and those were all hardwired. And then you got this intermediate thing for personal bots where I can do the following 5 things that is presented in a mobile app or in a square on a website that says, oh, you're calling about this. That wasn't very much different from press 1 for sales, press 2 for billing. So we're grounded in what we are able to absorb. We are expectant that we want to use this stuff. Then there's a middle ground where people are putting limits around what it's going to let you take advantage of based on what has the highest probability of success or 0 possibility of failure. So you're back to sort of hardwiring what you're going to do with the output of these things, and we'll work on the balance of how much of that is automated. And Ralph, that gets to, can it be done? Is there a sustainable business model for an infallible personal agent answering, your questions, or even predicting? It's Tuesday, Dan, you do blah, 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 all that stuff. It's been demonstrated that it can do this stuff, but then there's a checklist of constraints that have to be put on it for it to do it successfully and consistently. I hope that answered your question. There'll always be room for the little guy because these things are by design aren't going to work.
Yeah. The human in the loop and a trusted network of how we create stuff is something which is keeping us awake at night, such as we learned from GDPR, we learned from other rules and regulations. The Europeans created a draft European AI Act. Now there is the White House directive. But what we see, what is in place, is only we commit ourselves to being nice guys. And we put 8 layers around, and we control one system with the other. Is that enough, or where should it drive?
Yeah, as you look at the development of the core technology and the definition of the applications and use cases where it's working, the role of regulation is always treated as an externality to those processes, and government almost by definition cannot keep at a pace with technological innovation. And so the self-regulation is always presented as sort of the most efficient, and trusting the core technology developers to, quote, do the right thing, unquote, will prevail. And that gets to the soap opera that we were talking about before the call, of, the folks that are leaving OpenAI en masse because the innovators have outstripped the folks that are saying, hey, we have to do this in a ethical and trusted manner. It's almost cultural, and
Yeah.
if you look at the past, it is the innovators that tend to prevail. We got to hope the consequences of them charging ahead without government restraints isn't apocalyptic. But we'll see.
The thing is, as Marshall is a big movie fan, and we shared in earlier discussions the old picture of Colossus. If you imagine that an Eastern Bloc and a Western Bloc, large data center, communicate within each other, and then decide that we humans are the disturbing factor and it needs to be put somewhere else. That is a framework. If you see that OpenAI stuff, Microsoft stuff, Google stuff, AWS stuff, and whoever is around the corner in Llama or Meta, if they start communicating to each other, what, from the learning perspective, would that be for a marvelous legal approach? Or is this totally illegal, and is this making you nervous?
I guess it would make me nervous if we humans hadn't proven to be plucky or whatever we are, and because remember the movie Her, which has come up recently because of the Scarlett Johansson controversy, and with GPT-4o's voice. But I mean, Her ended up with the AI just losing interest in him because it found the other intelligence much more fascinating. And the gift of science fiction is these creative writers have seen both the positive aspects of what's going to happen and predicted every single way this could go south, to the point where it is top of mind to bring this up on a call like this. And yeah, everything's going to get everything. A lot of this is going to get translated in not just the efforts of government to define what the limits to conduct of these things ought to be, which I think is that's a necessary voice and an awareness raising thing, but it is going to be the guardrails that are voluntarily put on, as has been exhibited by what happened with Google with the Gemini image stuff, is that it's clear that there are people on staff that are trying to say these are the constraints we put on. We know what the potential of Tay. We're back to Tay on Twitter. Something that there's a corrupting of what the response is going to be, but there's also constraints that you can put on internally to avoid that. So there's awareness that, hey, we don't. There's awareness that if they do start talking to one another, great things will happen. And then there's got, what this is the whole, is there a kill switch for the web or something like that, that once the chain reaction begins, can we stop it and go back to square one? But it does take a triggering moment, I would think.
I take out of that statement that it is mandatory that we have a code of conduct and that we work on that very severe and with honesty, and have also a listening capability for the skeptics and not run only where the money is.
Right.
Yeah, that's my complaint from the beginning, is that the technology got out of the hands of the pure researchers and got into the hands of the applied researchers who have a goal. There's a hole in their guardrail. Try and get to market with this. And that has created a mess.
And another item which is interesting, as we are all on the one end success driven and want to focus on things which we have more love to do so and where we have more fun, such as I wait for the AI which is helping me not only by my housework, laundry, and with washing the dishes, but coming to our business, which is very important, is cleaning data. You can ask the vendors. No one has an honest answer on how they will clean with AI's help, even with the loop, the data. They just lift to right in the middle, but nobody is saying, hey, we sorted that. We do it. It's done. Yeah. And one step forward would have been that the big blue cloud would have bought Informatica. There could have been one step forward, but it didn't work out. Now, seeing that and seeing who are the makers of the NPU chips, which are so hot right now and high. What is if we have a little look at the globe and find out it's Taiwan, it's Taiwan, it's Taiwan, it's Taiwan, it's Taiwan, and a bit of Korea, and it's Taiwan and Taiwan and Taiwan, and a bit of mainland China? Surprise, surprise. Who is, if we see it from what we learned in the pandemia, if we break that logistic chain, that supply chain, who can deliver these kind of technology out of the box? In Europe, you won't find them. They are talking about.
Interesting. Yeah. Well, I mean, the closest, the closest thing, something like Grok, or I mean, so there'll be new chips designed to solve specific problems, and we'll see. The turning data, aggregating it, doing all that sort of stuff. That's independent, I think, of how the what the NPU, GPU providers are thinking. It's more of an architectural and workflowy sort of thing, and it's a known challenge. So I think there's some thinking going on there. I can't speak. There's pale efforts, things like at Verint, where they have a conversation data hub, where at least you come up with a way of like finding stuff and using it to respond with relevant information.
All right. So as we are starting to draw down towards the end of the hour, or the top of the next hour, if you prefer to think, Dan, I want to ask you for some famous last words.
Okay.
Considering the perspective we have on AI right now, can you speak to what you think it will look like in 5 years? Is 5 years too long a reach? Should we talk 2 years?
Well, so we at Opus have taken up this idea of looking at maturity models, not for the technologies, but for, because I said it's an oxymoron to think of GenAI and maturity, because it's never going to get there. So yes, the 5 years is it's abstract, but it's about our ability to harness it and use it in ways that benefit us. I think human nature, we're selfish enough to sort of figure that out. And yeah, so 5 years, this is, this is 2029. I won't speak to how old I'm going to be then, but I think there be a search for equilibrium between us and this rich fabric of AI infused solutions. But we'll be a lot farther along the way, addressing Ralph's stuff about how we benefit from the hyperscalers figuring out how to aggregate and train on all of the world's knowledge in ways that answer questions that, and this is where our role is really important. And it's more than prompt engineering, but it's defining what we want as individuals and getting those results. So 5 years from now, we'll know a lot better what these things are capable of, and we'll have done a much better job of showing where it benefits us. And if us is a corporation, because corporations are legal entities, I won't say they're people, but they might figure out how to do how this impacts their bottom line. But it'll be right around that threshold that year 2, we'll understand how much this stuff's going to cost a little better, so we have 3 years to figure out how you deploy it profitably.
Well, sounds good to me. It's as good a place to end as any, despite the fact there's so much more we can continue discussing.
Yeah.
Dan Miller, Opus Research, thank you so much
thank you
for your time.
Fun.
It's been great.
Yeah.
Now, to our audience, thank you very much for sticking with us, listening, doing all the things. Next week, tune in next week when Thomas and Ralph will be discussing the future AI ecosystem, industry focus on the solution, and its possibilities for organizations with CX focus, with guest John Tashik of Salesforce. I won't be there probably, but it's going to be a good one, and I'll at least be listening.
Me too. Yeah, thanks everybody.
Until then, thank you everyone.
And now we go to the stage. Bye-bye.